is there anything really worth valuing in the thoughts of this world? Because that's what all these sections of the Course are about: attraction to pain, attraction to guilt, attraction to death. Who would put such morbid topics in a book unless they were important? Those three subsections are together. Attraction to pain, attraction to guilt, attraction to death. There's some strange, that's the unholy instant, some strange spell that has been cast. A mist has fallen over the planet, and like with Siddhartha, it's a mist, and everybody's under a spell, everybody's asleep in the Siddhartha story, and he has to leave the palace, he has to go and follow the song that he hears, to leave the sleeping mist, to go out, and he goes through asceticism, which is trying to push away the comforts and pleasures of the world, and he has to go through meditation and all of the different temptations as he leaves the palace. But we want to go so deeply into this. We were talking about the Gnostics too, how the Gnostics were right at the same time of Christ, right after Christ. Gnosticism was very strong, and they actually believed that the world was an illusion. But they had some strange practices. They actually believed because of his illusion they could indulge in all the pleasures of the world and do it as much as they could to prove that it was an illusion, and it didn't work. Why? Because pleasure and pain are the same trick. And Jesus says it's impossible to seek for pleasure without finding pain. But who on earth hasn't seemed to enjoy the pleasure? That's what keeps the mind stuck in the unholy instant. That's what the mesmerism's all about. If the world was only pain, if every decision you ever made on planet Earth was pain, would it be difficult to hit the eject button and to fly and be free of the world if it was all pain and there was no attraction to it? If every single decision was seen as death, if every turn was seen as death, would you take a turn?
There would still be the fear of returning, because what you fear is not the fear. What you fear most is not the fear; it is the love that you will meet when you return. So I have this feeling that we'll keep on choosing death and pain because we're afraid of what will meet us when we let go of it.
What return means?
Yeah.
Return to heaven.
So the attraction of pain and death becomes the escape from what will happen when we return.
So that's sounding very much like the movie Inception, like layers of dreaming, because there's some kind of fear that's greater than earthquakes and tornadoes, exactly. Greater than the death of the body.
It's the idea that it will be worse.
It's the idea.
Yeah.
So you might say it is kind of an interesting mesmerism. You'd have to be convinced that what you perceive
is true,
even if it's not so great all the time, that it's better. Yeah. That duality and opposites are actually better than return. And Jesus had a very interesting thing to say in the Course about the word return. Do you ever read that part of the Course?
Don't remind me.
Jesus says the ego likes the idea of return. He actually says that in the Course. Those are his exact English words. The ego likes the idea of return. Why? He continues on the rest of the sentences. Anybody remember what the rest of the sentence is? The ego likes the idea of return, comma, because it can make the idea difficult. Because return is another concept. How, if it's a journey without distance to a goal that never changed, wouldn't return have to be another trick? How can you return to what you never left? You see, a cat chasing its tail, but the ego likes the idea of return. Isn't that amazing? We talk all the time about return to love, return to God. Return to love, I think Marianne Williamson even titled her book, Return to Love, and the ego likes the idea of return. She didn't put that in the book, because it can make the idea difficult. So how clever, how sneaky, how ingenious this puff of nothingness is, where it even likes the idea of return because it can make it difficult. This is why we have to go beyond conceptual understanding of A Course in Miracles. This is why Jesus says you will believe this course entirely or not at all. No bonuses for good tries. Trust not your good intentions. It's in there. This course will be believed entirely or not at all. So this is not about a conceptual understanding of the course. That always seems to come first, because if you're reading a book and it's called A Course, you're going to try to grasp at it. But it's going to be like one of those rides, the rotor. If anybody ever remembers the rotor from amusement parks, it's the one where you stand and press your back against the wall, and then it spins. And then, as it spins more and more, the floor drops out. That if you practice A Course in Miracles conceptually, and with great passion and determination, and great desire for the experience the Course points to, not the conceptual theology, because that has to drop along with the rest of the floor. There's an experience that will come, he says in the clarification of terms, that will end your doubting. An experience will come that will end your doubting, and seek that experience. Don't seek for conceptual understandings. You can't find joy conceptually. I have a lot of people who tell me, I haven't hit the joy point. I feel times of release, I feel times of healing relief. I do feel miraculous times, I've had miracles in my life, but I haven't hit joy. Because joy has to be consistent miracles. You have to be consistently right-minded to hit the peak of joy, not just a stab of joy. Jesus even points at that, a stab of joy, a stab of pleasure. He even uses the word stab to be how fleeting and brief is what a little stab is. So that's what this interaction is this afternoon, is like an invitation to really, for all of us to look closely at what is it that I still value about this world. It can even be a thought, a little tiny thought, that would have me believe that there actually is a future different from the past. Which I say, actually, the future is the same. I call it the future past and the past past, just to emphasize the point that it's all the past. That's why the mystics or the psychics can read the future, because they're not reading the future. They're reading the Akashic records. They're reading the past, and it's only the belief that the future is different from the past that is the root cause of all suffering in this world. The belief that the future is different from the past. How could you have ambition if you knew that your ambition was actually a death wish? That what's so common in this time-space world, you might remember that line from the movie Gandhi, where he's walking down in South Africa with the American journalist named Walker, and Walker says to him, Mr. Gandhi, this is an ashram he's building in South Africa, Mr. Gandhi, you're quite an ambitious fellow, the American says to Gandhi. And Gandhi's reply, I hope not. I remember when I first was in the theater watching Gandhi, that was so fun to hear those three words, because that's a common thing in the Western world, the civilized world. Maybe not among the Aborigines. They're probably not an ambitious, they don't really have a lot of ambition in their culture, because they're very into the moment and telepathy. But for the Western world, to have no ambition is you are a bum, you are lazy, you are not a contributing member of society, you have no value, you're a castaway. We call it in America welfare. If you are not ambitious, you are on welfare, or I guess they have a word for it over in Denmark.
Yeah, it's probably the same word.
Same word.
Same word.
Just the things.
Same Danish version of the same word.
Yeah.
And that's not a good word. And when you look at it closely, welfare, farewell.
Yeah.
You can say farewell or well, faring well is actually, I'm going to stir up political, I've just lost the entire political system of the United States with that one. But But truly, faring well is to say farewell
Yeah.
to the world, to all aspects. So this is really, this is where we get into the deeper experience, is to say, well, what is it, if you journal, you said, oh, I still like my cat, or I still like, I have good investments, I have a good nest egg that allows me to travel, and that's the same idea. It's a death wish, recycled. I have amazing support from the world. I get government assistance, or I get by with a little help from my friends. Even that, if you're dependent on your friends, that is still the death wish. Because in Lesson 76, Jesus actually puts friendship among economics and nutrition. He calls it the laws of friendship are even made up by the ego. Even friendship is part of the death wish. Now that's getting deep when you start to see that, knowing the right, he mentions that in Lesson 50. Being liked, he mentions, and knowing the right people are two of his things, and believing you're sustained by something other than the love of God. He mentions those specifically there. So let's do it.